I'm Chris Edwards, and I'm the son of a rocket scientist and a theater major, somewhere in between the high technology and the high artistic. And I think that's what is the genesis of the perfect previs artist. And at the time I was growing up, I didn't really even have an idea of what previs was. All I knew was that I wanted to work with filmmakers, and I wanted to not be the director, but I wanted to help them achieve their vision. And so that's what I did. Is I went to traditional film school. I tried to seek out ways in which I can do this sort of enhancement of the filmmaking process, and it was lucky timing in that right around the time I graduated from film school at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, I ended up having enough internships to build up to the fact that I could get a job at Disney Feature Animation. And it was on this job, working on Disney's Dinosaur, which is a very pioneering show, that I ended up getting the chance to work on the very first previs team at Disney Feature Animation, where they pre-visualized the entire movie, because it was live action backgrounds with CG dinosaurs. And at the time, they didn't even call it previs. There really wasn't that understanding of what previs was or what it could become at the time, but essentially it was an extension of the layout process in an animated feature film. And so that's what I am doing today, is I'm trying to further that exploration of what previs can be in the future. And so I formed my own company called The Third Floor, and it's a partnership between 6 of the 10 people that worked with George Lucas on the 3rd floor of the Skywalker Ranch house, which is where George builds the blueprint for his movies. He does so with concept artwork on one side of the main house, and on the other side there's the 3D previs team. And so since I worked on War of the Worlds and Star Wars Episode 3 so much during that time, that I wanted to keep that team together. There was a special vibe between us, and we're still a band of brothers, keeping it alive at the 3rd floor in LA. So previs is the art form of sort of like animated storyboards, if you will, but taken to a much higher level. It's not just conceptualizing the posing of the scene. It's actually the movement of images and elements through the scene. And so what previs becomes is the hub of creativity, the digital place where all of everyone's influence, from the production designer, the other key collaborators like the visual effects supervisor, editor, cinematographer, and of course the director and producer, all of their choices come together in the form of this digital blueprint we call the previs. And that previs process actually has multiple what we call subspecies, because it really is a process that lasts from the very beginning stages of pitching a project all the way through the final handoff to final post-production. So at the very beginning, we call that subspecies definition pitchvis. This is one of the most exciting things we've been working on over the last several years, is being commissioned by filmmakers, independents, and also the main studios to help them breathe life into a concept, or to test out what the director is capable of doing, either doing a litmus test scene or to do something that is like a teaser trailer or a full-length trailer of the property before it even is shot. And so this is a very compelling and exciting creative time for the filmmaker and for the previs team. We're sort of investing in the filmmaker and the project, because what we want to do is make sure that they're successful, that they get their funding and their distribution deal, and if they're rocking and rolling, we get to move on to the next stage, which is, of course, the design and the previs stage, the actual formal previs. So that's always a collaboration on the design side between the DViz people, which are working on what's called design visualization in the art department, building some of the props, characters, the designs for certain environment pieces, and then doing a handoff with the previs team that ends up taking those and building more on top of that in collaboration. And then basically once we have all the props, characters, environments, and whatnot, we can arrange that, animate it to the best of our ability in the short period of time that we have, and we conceptualize the scene. Then, once we've created something that actually works in editorial and the director's blessing, and it seems to be like a good bet for actually filming that, or in the case of an animated feature, actually animating that, you end up having the process of technical analysis of that, which we call technical previs. Sometimes we gather the technical information as we go, so we know what the lens is and the height of the camera, and all of these different things are just burned into the plates at the bottom that we create from the previs. But nice thing is that, you know, for a live action shoot, we can mimic a lot of the gear that we would potentially bring out on set. So we have all the camera rigs, we have the motion control stuff, we have the C-stands and all this stuff, and we can make sure that the green screen is the right size, and we measure those dimensions and can give them either diagrams or animated visualizations of what was done in the previs, usually only done for key shots or sections of sequences that are ultra complex. But more often than not, we end up just getting together with the actors and the, say, the DP, the camera operator, and a bunch of other folks that have to actually operate this shot, and looking at it on a laptop from a top-down point of view, and you get to see, okay, this is what's happening with the camera, and, you know, obviously feel free to change it up, and we can riff off of this, but this is what the previous team did. This is how that shot was constructed. And then after technical previs helps them prepare for the set, there's the whole production aspect of how previs can support the director during production. So that's what we call on-set previs. And on-set previs is also kind of very close to the new definition of virtual production, which is the sort of the larger arena that includes on-set previs. So to explain that, on-set previs started out as a bunch of guys taking their computers out on set and saying, okay, you know, we're not quite done with the previs, or we're going to help you riff off on the fly. If you have questions about what was done in the previs, we're going to load that scene up, we're going to measure that real quick, or we're going to perhaps do a very quick composite of the footage that's coming off of the video tap, the live stuff, with whatever we've cobbled together from the previs, just as a quick validation that it's going to work before they strike the set. Okay, so that's the on-set previs kind of SWAT team approach. That's been going on for years and years. Now, with the advent of movies like the Bob Zemeckis movies, having to do with like Beowulf, Christmas Carol, and that sort of motion capture performance, as well as what you have in the context of a movie like Avatar or Real Steel, you have the full-blown implementation of what we call virtual production. So that's the idea of computer graphics on stage at the same time that you're doing live action imagery. And having many of those performances of the digital elements being driven by motion capture performers. So what's exciting is there's definitely a movement towards this for certain swath of films to be able to compose your live action at the same time that you're getting a preview of what the digital elements are going to look like on screen, either as characters or set extensions. Because it's very scary to kind of be in a green screen universe and be on set and actually have the actors understand what they're doing, and much less the director understanding how that's going to be composed, when you can't see. You're kind of shooting blind at that point, unless you do some virtual production experience and bring some of that previs assets and the art department assets on set. That's the dream of virtual production. And so after you start shooting the plates, these days you don't have to wait for the photochemical process of going through and developing at the lab and all of that timing stuff. You basically get it either real time or the next day you get your dailies. And those dailies can be very quickly triaged and decided in editorial, okay, which plates are they going to use, and they can have a very ballpark idea of how they want to piece together the sequence. But if there's a lot of digital elements, or say there's a character that's a digital character, oftentimes you need to start cobbling that together, putting in some representation of the 3D characters or set extensions, so you can actually even make a director's cut. So the director and the editor can see what they're cutting and cut that down into sort of a fine, pretty orchestrated cut of what they want to do. So anyways, that's the idea, is that postvis is the aspect of the previs team putting in the digital elements back into those plates. And you do it in a quick and dirty way, fairly artistic, but not as accurate as what they will have to do in final post-production. So if we can supply editorial with that footage, they can hone down on exactly what they want. They send that postvis cut to multiple vendors in the post-production world. They can analyze it. It really puts everyone on an even playing field, and they know quite clearly this is the challenge. And I think this is one of the areas where we can really, really improve our workflow across the industry and make sure that everyone has plenty of time to do what they've taken on. And if there's a change to the post-viz edit, that means that those visual effects companies deserve to get a little bit more, a change order of sorts, so that they can go beyond the original understanding of the vision. And I think that that's one of the things that will help lessen the abuse of artists and the sort of the bad business model of visual effects. If we can be a little bit more open to defining the vision in advance, even going into post-production. So I think there's a lot of different types of directors out there. There's the directors that have had a lot of experience with pioneering sort of digital technologies and are a little more open to pushing the boundaries. And those are some of the first early adopters of previs. And yet there's the rest of the mainstream filmmakers out there that have to be convinced that previs is right for them, right for the sequence, but right for just their process. And honestly, we've been evolving and getting better and more approachable, I think, as a previs industry. We've been maturing, and I think that there is a lot of new ways in which filmmakers can kind of apply their craft to previs without having to deal with any of the technology at all. It really is exciting that filmmakers can kind of come in and they just say, this is what I'm thinking about, and yet I want to explore the options, and you show me some options, and I'm going to have very concrete vision of certain scenes, but I'm going to have a lot of, I need advice for certain areas of this other action sequence or something. I want to see what you guys have, and then I'm going to steer the ship in the right direction, which is right for my movie.